Hello and welcome to this demonstration on how to post non-order invoices, credit card expenditure and direct debit expenditure in Sage Intacct for Education. Let's start with how to process a non-order invoice via Sage Intacct's accounts payable application. So from the menu, I can choose the option for AP purchase invoices or the plus symbol next to it, which will take me directly into a new accounts payable purchase invoice. If I specify a supplier and an invoice number, you will notice the system will automatically warn me if the transaction already exists within the system for the particular supplier. So that can be set up to warn or error depending on the preference of your multi-academy trust, but it will automatically give you that insight if the transaction has already been processed. So I'm going to change that, and we will then continue on entering in the rest of the AP purchase invoice. I can very easily add attachments to any transaction within Sage Intacct, but if I wanted to attach a physical copy of the invoice directly by dragging and dropping the attachment from my other screen into the box, it just takes a few seconds. We are able to place the invoices on hold if required, if we're not going to be paying them initially, and we can specify terms and due dates accordingly. If we scroll down to the entries layout, I'm able to specify a manual VAT registration number if required. So if it doesn't pull through from the supplier, I'm able to specify that so it will still be picked up on my VAT reports. I can enter my amount, cost center, and then I can specify funds and other dimensional insights there as I need to. We'll pop on a rate of tax, which can be defaulted depending on the supplier and what is set up. So we have all we need to be able to process the non-order invoice through directly into the system. This will allow me to post it straight through, but we will have an approval policy associated with this invoice if required before it can be sent off for the payment run. So that's an example of processing the AP purchase invoice as a non-order invoice, something that hasn't come through the purchase order workflow. We'll quickly now take a look at how that will be paid in the system. So if we look at the Pay AP Purchase Invoices option, you can see we have the option to specify the bank, the payment method, the payment dates. We can filter the list of transactions, the list of invoices due for payment. We can create all sorts of filter sets to really narrow down the selection of the invoices we're looking for. And I can select or deselect the invoices that are not yet due for payment. The invoices are drillable at this stage as well, where I can physically click through and get into the details of the invoice, where I can then see more information where required. So that's very straightforward in terms of how to pay the purchase invoices via Sage Intacct's accounts payable application. Once the payment run is finalized, we can export a BACS file, which will then be uploaded to the bank. And Sage Intacct can also be linked up directly with your bank for reconciliation purposes, which actually leads on to things like direct debit expenditure and credit card expenditure and ways we can make that more straightforward too. Sage Intacct, because it is linked to the bank, can automatically create certain transactions such as direct debits based on preset criteria that you set up. We will look at how we can manually create direct debits without the bank connection, but just to bear in mind, we do have that functionality also within the system. If we look next at credit card expenditure, I can navigate now not into accounts payable. I will enter credit card postings through cash management, where I have the option for manual payments or other receipts if this is income. However, for credit card expenditure, we will look at an option for a manual payment, where I will specify the payment method, the bank, so I'll pick my credit card at this particular stage, the transaction amount. If applicable, I can choose a supplier. In this case, I'm going to choose credit card transactions because there might not be a supplier set up within the system. So if we don't have the supplier record, we can simply choose credit card transactions from the drop down, enter in things like the invoice number if applicable, any attachments, Manual VAT registration numbers again are there, and then we can proceed to fill in the entries layout in the same way we did moments ago on the AP purchase invoice, where I'll specify all the dimensional values that are required for this particular spend. So that's a credit card transaction, which will be posted directly through and update the credit card balance, which can then be reconciled in the same way as the current accounts. Now, with direct debits, it's a similar process again. However, what we do within Sage Intacct for Education is we can set up for direct debit recurring journal entries, because a journal entry within this system does impact the bank. So it will appear on the bank reconciliation, ready to be reconciled. I've got an example of a recurring direct debit example set up where we can take a look. You can see the last posted result was successful. We can edit that to open up and see more details around the recurring direct debit journal entry. So we have the bank and the payables account that will be associated with the spend, descriptions, and we are able to specify the cost centers, trips, and other dimensional values, again in the same way that we did for credit card expenditure and for AP purchase invoices. You'll notice, again, we do have the option for attachments, where we can specify that also.